Oh, yeah, sorry. Vicky is not going to be able to make it. She sent me a text. And Harry also was going to tune in online, but he's had a medical situation, minor, but he's not able to tune in anywhere. So that's where we are.
Before we start, Sam, I would mute that podium mic when it's not in, no, just, you can do it there. Just click mute on that when it's not in use until we get a chance to.
All right. So this is calling to order the special call Signal Mountain Town Council meeting for Wednesday, August 18th, 2021. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We will roll into a short invocation and then move on to the roll call. For first, the invocation, or a moment of silence. Okay. Carol, can we have a roll call, please?
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson. I'm sorry, I skipped over because I know she's out. Councilmember Dana Landrum.
Here.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Here. We had several, or two, I guess, minutes. Is it two or three? Three, sorry. 3 sets of minutes. Did anybody or everybody have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Does anybody have any changes to make to them?
I didn't see anything.
Okay. Neither did I.
Motion to approve.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right. The minutes are approved. There's several people here. Do we have anyone who wishes to address the council tonight? We got one.
My name is Bill Sonnenberg, and I live at 402 Ohio Avenue. And I actually had a lot of material prepared for the last meeting, but it was my wife's birthday, and I elected to make the better decision. And the council went ahead and voted in the manner that I would have been urging the council to vote. But I just wanted to make a couple of points regarding the budget. And I've spent a fair amount of time looking over the materials, and if anyone is just watching online or reviews this, I thought I could summarize it in a minute or two, rather than people having to spend the amount of time I did. And just in round numbers, our town's annual budget is just shy of $9 million. The thing that's made the budget tighter than usual, and there's a chart that the town put out about this, has to do with the town revenues from the Hall state income tax on out-of-state investments, which at the high point in 2015 was $900,000. And the way that state income tax was done away with, it was gradually reduced year after year until now it is down to zero. It's been repealed. But at that $900,000 high point, that represented well over 10% of the town's income. That's gone. So that's, in my mind, the thing that's stressing the town's budget the greatest. And with that drop in income, we have now come up with what I think is a very good way to address town employee pay scale and an ongoing chart that would address that, that's very useful. And again, just in round numbers, I think to pay the recommended amount for the pay scale for town employees is roughly $315,000. And so when you take all of those into consideration, the question is, where do you go for more money or to keep up with the old money that we were used to seeing? And it then becomes imperative to have a sales tax increase. And the question just becomes, how much should it be, not whether we should have it. And so the town has, by a compromise reached in the council a couple of meetings ago, arrived at this number, which is 6 cents as opposed to 10 cents that was proposed. And this turns into $30 per year for a $200,000 home, $60 per year for a $400,000 home. That's very reasonable. My concern is that's relatively small in terms of what we will need into the future. So this, I think, is a good first step, but people should realize that this is only a first step. There may need to be a similar amount, if not next year, the year after, because with income to the town having dropped and cost to employ people and keep them going up slightly, there's going to have to be something similar to this, unless there is, as the vice mayor mentioned, some sort of overarching plan that could be developed over many years. But we're not anywhere near that. We're just dealing with this year. So my recommendation, and I urge the council, is to continue voting as you have in favor of the employees getting the slight raise and the real estate taxes getting this slight rise also.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay. We'll move on to the resolutions.
There's a phone call. Oh, they're calling for the public hearing.
Wait, what's that now?
There's somebody who's going to call in electronically.
Okay.
I didn't know if it was now, but it's public hearing.
Okay. No, that's fine. I can call him later.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. We will move on to the resolutions. There are two. The first resolution is a resolution authorizing the Chief of Police to submit an application for the Bureau of Justice Assistance Body-Worn Camera Grant Program. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
All right. Do we need any discussion about this? Seems pretty straightforward. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Okay, that motion passes. Next resolution is a resolution appointing Jeffrey Duke to be the Municipal Administrative Hearing Officer to hear violations of locally adopted code and zoning ordinances for the town of Signal Mountain as authorized by Tennessee Code Annotated Sections 6541001 through 6541018 and Sections 12-801 through 12-817 of the town code, and authorizing the town manager to execute the attached agreement for said services. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second? I'll second. Were there any changes to the contract we looked at last time?
No, this is what you reviewed and approved to move forward to this resolution.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or concerns, questions? Okay. All in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. All right, that motion passes as well. Now we are to the public hearing regarding the 2021 through 2022 tax rate. Is that where the person wants to call in? Okay. Sure.
Sam, if you would, be sure and have them name and address.
And also, sir, if you mind, we will state your name, address, and if you are watching the feed on YouTube, if you'll make sure that you do. And the floor is yours.
Okay, Paul Toth, 42 Ridge Rock Drive, Signal Mountain. I was calling to discuss a couple things. One was yard waste. I know that it's picked up in zones, but I'm trying to figure out if there's a way that we could let all the residents know when their zone is and not allow it to be in the street except for when their zone is scheduled for pickup. I have a lot of issues with having to pull into incoming traffic when you go around blind corners. And it seems like the yard waste, goes out shortly after we're serviced. So, it sits for a month or two. So that was the first thing I wanted to address to the council. The second thing was regarding the budget increase. The last I heard on this matter, we were not going to have a rate increase because of the assessment increase. And then I understand that there was a study that's come out. And what I'm wondering is if beyond the salaries and positions, are we comparing those towns' total government system with ours? Employees, do they have employees that are doing more? And that's why they're getting paid more. And then I was wanting to know where we are at with the annexed lands and those incoming proceeds, where that is affecting the budget. Because we have new home starts out there and that reassesses those properties and increases the budget there. So those were the things that I wanted to basically bring up to make sure that we're looking at when we look at these increases where we don't have the commercial revenue that maybe some of these other places have. And that's what our town has chosen to do, which is fine, but then at the same time, we don't compare our town to other towns, apples to apples. And that's pretty much all I wanted to address here.
Okay.
That and kind of short turnaround from where I saw the budget previously, and then, we were on vacation and stuff and come back and get the kids in school and find out there's a final vote for the budget tonight.
Okay. Anything else?
Thank you for your time.
Can you say your name again? I didn't catch it.
Can you repeat your name, sir?
Oh, it's Paul. Last name's Toth, T-O-T-H.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coach.
Is there anyone else waiting online? Okay. Anyone here have anything to address?
Ann Haygood, 506 James Boulevard. I'd like to thank you for taking the responsible step of achieving a greater balance to our budget by raising our tax rate 6 cents. I would encourage you, however, to look at it again next year and raise it enough to actually cover expenses. But I thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else have any public comments? Okay. We also have a public hearing regarding the fiscal year 2021 through 2022 budget. Do we have anyone who wants to address the council about that? All right. So I guess we move on to the ordinances. The first ordinance is an ordinance of the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022, hereinafter known as the FY 2021-2022 Budget Ordinance. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Just one note that if you've been following news, I believe East Ridge went up 26 cents. The 26?
I think that's right.
I think it's 26. Chattanooga's gone to minimum $15 an hour for employees, if I understand. I'm concerned for us that moving into this next year, that we're going to be at the bottom of the pay scale in the entire market again. So I think we're setting ourselves up to be in trouble. I mean, I'm voting for this, but
What do you suggest we do now about that?
I don't think there's anything we can do right now, but I think as the pay plan is implemented and the budget is looked at going forward, I think it needs some scrutiny to make sure that we remain competitive for our employees. But we're going to have to do it out of this existing budget.
Yeah, I think I would like to see us implement the, I think,
4%?
the raise, whatever that was, 3 or 4%?
Yeah, well,
First, and then hold off on finalizing the, adjustments for people into the pay scale until we can have MTAS come and kind of review our processes. Andrew had talked with MTAS, they're available, they'll do something for us, and I think if we had the Personnel Committee work with MTAS to implement some sort of study before we finalize that pay study, that would be a good way to go about it, to see, a good start on the plan for the next year, to see where we can maybe save money or run better. So
you recognize, though, that would be paying them less, not more.
no, I'm not saying don't do the pay study. I'm just saying before we implement the final step, which would be placing people into that pay scale, we do some homework first by having MTAS come and just analyze our processes and our structure and all that, just to give us that would help us implement the pay scale, I think, tremendously. And Andrew talked to them,
Help develop an implementation plan is what they said they've done in the past with some of these studies.
Yeah.
In the meantime, though, wouldn't that mean, that's not something, I'm sure they've done studies, that doesn't happen quickly, and that would hold.
This wouldn't be another study. This is just helping sort of marry those two things we're having to deal with. It's one, on the one side, we've had this study that's as scientific as these things come, done by Burris Thompson, and it says, it gives you kind of a diagnosis, right? But we need the prognosis. How do we get there in a budget fiscal framework that towns have to deal with? That's
Sure.
kind of what
But we have had the study done. The Personnel Committee has looked at it, which is the proper procedure. The Town Council has voted on implementation. And
We voted to adopt the pay scale, but implementing it is the next step after you adopt it.
we know
We haven't implemented it, so we've adopted the pay scale, and we will implement it. But I'm just saying, before we implement it, let's do this step of asking for help to make sure we're doing the best we can possibly do. I think that's what people want us to do. People are not happy that we're raising taxes, and if we don't do things carefully and appropriately, then we're not going to do the right thing. We're not going to make people happy.
where are the people who are upset about taxes?
You can look at the email feeds or the people that Andrew's talked to or Vicky's talked to. There were plenty of them.
Sure.
I had people.
Being one, I'd rather my taxes not go up, but if we start losing
Look.
police personnel, Because, wait a second. Let me
Nobody's
finish.
suggesting
Please let me finish my thought. If we slow this down, we're already slowing it down because we didn't have the budget done in July. So July's gone by, we pushed it into August. If you push it into another month, that's 3 months of not raise
No,
that the employees get. So you aren't saying, I'm totally misunderstanding you if that's not the case.
you are, because
Okay,
I
I'm
said,
sorry.
I think we ought to implement the raise. That way we're doing something. But before we do the final implementation of the pay scale, to put people,
Next
you're here, you're there, whatever.
But that is the.
That's,
raise, though.
no, the raise is a 4% raise
Everybody's
across
getting
the
an across the
board.
board.
That's,
Right?
I mean, it's, what was budgeted was the implementation of the plan, but we started with a 3% base increase. But then it involves placing people on the pay scale accordingly, once that's done.
Right.
But not where they belong.
No,
Long
that's-
term, yeah, right, that's what,
No,
and I
the
think that's where
4%
Dan
didn't
and
put people where they belong.
Charlie are,
That's the next steps. This is the first step of at least getting them close and making it as equitable and consistent as we can.
Okay. Now,
you're
what we-
talking about next year, right? I mean, next steps.
Yeah.
Not change our process
No, no,
right
no.
now, which
This-
is what I think you're,
No, I think he is talking about changing the process now,
No.
not implementing the steps.
no, I
No,
don't think so.
no.
You're not talking, you are talking
No.
about implementing the steps.
No. I don't really find this to be that confusing.
I do. and I'm
Okay,
not
that's
that
fine, and
stupid.
no,
Oh.
it maybe because I've thought about it a lot, but what I'm saying is, the way this works is we have a pay scale with numbers on it, right? And, there's numbers going up this way, across this way, and a bunch in the middle, right? We've adopted that pay scale. We've said, this is the pay scale we want to use. It's part of the budget. Burris Thompson has said, this is what it's going to cost, or somebody has said, this is what it's going to cost. We've allocated a way to come up with that money, to put people into this as it currently is. And I'm not saying to change the pay scale at all. What I'm saying is, we were going to give people a raise, okay? And then we were going to take the people after that and put them on the pay scale where they should be. And all I'm saying is, in between the raise and putting people on the pay scale, we have MTAS come in and help us to implement, to make sure we're putting people where they should be, to help us.
This way, not this way.
Is that what you thought he was saying?
That's what I
So
thought he
you
was
want there
saying.
to be a pause between the raise and where they should be on the pay
I
scale?
don't think it would be a significant pause. I think it will help us to do the right thing, and that's what people want us to do. And,
What kind of timeline are we talking about here, do you think?
I
Did
think
they
we
say
need
that,
to-
Andrew?
yeah, I think we need to talk to MTAS and see that kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, we don't even know the cost of moving
Yeah, I
everybody
need
onto
to,
that.
better understand. Were you talking about doing what we can with the funds that are in this budget, and then getting assistance from MTAS beyond that?
I think
Or not utilizing some of these funds yet?
I think that's what I'm talking about, because I think if you were to, I'm not talking about any particular employee. I'm just saying, if MTAS came in and said, here's how it should be implemented, and we had already implemented it and put people in the pay scale where we thought they should be, but MTAS came in and said, yeah, that person really shouldn't be there, they should be here. You can't really tell that person, yeah, I'm moving you now. We already put you here, and we've set your salary or whatever, and now we're gonna move you. That's not, that wouldn't fly.
I don't think MTAS will do that. That's the nature of the pay comp study that we had done. And again, that's pretty much everybody that works for the town getting on the pay plan doesn't equate to putting them where they need to be. It's just simply getting them in the right grade at a comparable step. We have people that have been here for 15 years that are in a step 5 or 6. So it's not putting people where they need to be. It was a matter of setting the plan and plugging everybody in a equitable as possible way, and addressing the areas of greatest concern, such as fire and police. Base levels are entry level and above that are the furthest out of whack. Heavy equipment operators, CDL drivers, things like that, that were the furthest behind, they're up and impacted a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I'm saying don't like wait to do the raise. Do the raise now. And that way everybody's gonna feel something positive. But then while we're, whatever time frame it takes, and maybe we just talk to MTAS and see what kind of time frame they're talking about, and then
I
bring
think
this
the
up
budget
again.
is to have it effective the first day of the budget, correct? The
It
the
generally,
initial implementation.
Generally, when these things have happened, when we've been late in implementing a budget, they've been retroactive to July 1st. And frankly, I was going to recommend against that in favor of a request to go back to where we started, because making that 1% change from the 4 to the 3 doesn't sound like a lot, but it really threw things out of kilter. And at this point, if we went back and we implemented what was recommended and did it for 10 months instead of the 3% start point for 12 months, it would pretty much wash out.
So the budget that we are having a hearing on is at 4%?
No.
Okay.
The 3% just relates to how everything was calculated in the pay plan. And when you plug people into steps, for instance, we have 3 people in the same position, different tenures, most senior, in the middle, and then the least senior of those positions. When we change that, the most senior and the least senior person in that position, raise dropped about 2%, because it dropped him into the next step down. The person in the middle didn't change. And we saw that in several different cases, and then it created, when you have more tenured employees that saw that effect, where their raise dropped them down to another step, which equates to 2% drop, and then the newer people didn't, then you have people that have been here for several years, and the folks that are coming up that we intentionally were bringing their pay up because they were behind, now they're coming up within 50 cents an hour of somebody that's been here for 5 or 6 years. Now, these are just off the top of my head, but that's the kind of thing that happened when we changed that calculation. Those calculations were what was used to do the budget. That's what we were directed to do. So we did it, it dropped the amount, that's what's in the budget. But it really complicates and is problematic in terms of the first step in the pay plan, which has been part of this all along. We can do that for 12 months based on what's in the budget. Or we could go back to the original proposal that is far more equitable and doesn't have those issues, don't make it retroactive, and cover that for 10 months. And we're in a better position in a lot of ways. But since that question came up, that's...
So this budget has the percent model retroactive to July 1st.
But if I'm understanding what he says, if we implemented this the way he's talking about, it wouldn't change this budget at all. If you don't do the retroactive and you go to the 4%, it puts people, it establishes equity within the pay scale. And that's what's better off for the employees in the long run, and it meets this budget. So it wouldn't require a budget amendment. It's just,
Okay.
It's just a different way of using the funds. And again, to be clear, the 4% is just the first step. If everybody gets 4%, and then we see Steve looked at where that puts them. And if that gets them on the scale, then that's where they're plugged in. And then he looked at, all right, where are they in terms of tenure? And at most, they might get another step or so for tenure, even though it doesn't get them anywhere close to where they should be. A lot of the positions like firefighters and police officers, that 4% was just part of what they needed to get. So those raises are significantly above that. So that change didn't affect them. People that have been here for a while, it affected them, and then we got that compression, which is specifically what the Personnel Committee asked us to look at and avoid.
yes.
So the original plan works better. That plan which is what it was a plan for implementation. That works far better. But given the budget constraints, if we do that for 10 months instead of 12, we can still do it within the budgetary constraints, and we don't have these misalignments and issues. So in effect, none of it really has anything to do with the budget. We understand that this budget is the budget, and it's not a matter of asking for additional funds, just the latitude to make this work best we can within the constraints of the budget.
You mentioned some folks being in step 5 or 6.
I'm sorry?
You mentioned some folks being in step 5 or 6. Is
Right.
that the case?
Or some, yes. Some
How
are-
does that happen following these? Step 4 is the highest one listed on the implementation plan.
Where do you see
Yeah,
that?
If you're 10 or more years, you go into step 4.
I'm sorry?
It's in Steve's.
I think I could be wrong, you might be confusing the pay rate and the steps.
I don't think so. I think he said he's got people that are 15 or more years that are in step 5 or
We have
6.
15 steps.
I understand. But the implementation plan that we have approved has a target pay step of 10 or more years at step 4.
That's if where they plug in is less than step 4, they would go to step 4.
Okay.
If
So how do you end up
if
in
they're
step
above
6?
step 4, then they don't get any tenure adjustment. That's the scale used to determine if there's a tenure adjustment.
But you slot everybody in step 1, so I don't understand how that happens.
You don't spot them in step 1.
Unless the 3% already bumped them up, correct?
Correct.
So that's the
Or the
3%
3 or the
bumped them
4,
to
right.
step 6 from their
If-
current pay.
Right.
Okay.
Some people, if they've been here for many years, and that particular position wasn't as far off market as others, then they're not going to be as far down on the scale. They've been here for, again, 15 years, and we give them a 3 or 4% raise, whichever it was, and that happens to plug them in at step 6, that's where they are.
Is that the highest step we have?
I don't recall what the highest is off the top of my head.
I know 15 is on the scale, I'm just saying,
Right.
as far as people are plugged in.
I don't recall where the highest one was.
Okay.
But again, that question came up, so I'm put that to council, but in the long run, that has nothing to do with this budget. In terms of passing it, it's a matter of how we move forward with implementation, which is kind of what started this conversation.
Yeah.
Where did this MTS thing? Am I off? No, I'm on. Sorry, I can be louder. I can always be louder. I'm not sure where the MTS thing came from.
Well, it just,
I mean,
I had a
how did
discussion
you
with
know-
MTS that I mentioned
How
at
did I
another
know about
meeting.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about this at a council meeting.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, I
That's how
mentioned it
came
at a
about
meeting.
Yeah, Andrew mentioned it at a meeting.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I know about it.
I'm sorry, I don't recall that. I believe you.
I did. And,
Did the council vote that we were going to? do
no,
that?
I just mentioned that MTS, I had some
He called
discussions
them.
with our rep, and they had mentioned, what they have done in the past is they don't do salaries, but they can come in and help with an implementation plan for salary studies.
What do we need in order that we don't already have to implement the salary study we've already had done? Because it seems like it's already been laid
Right,
out.
next year,
No,
we
he's
know
talking
we're
about
not-
this year. He's talking about this fiscal budget, so let's make sure we're talking about the same thing.
okay, so
This year.
in this this year, if we're going to make changes, I'm thinking more future, getting to where we know we need to be on the steps coming across the scale, right? Not we've slotted correctly up and down the scale, but we haven't fixed across the scale. One, we don't know the dollar amount of that. How do we get to that dollar amount? And to me, Dan, the solution is not just raising taxes every time. So,
That's not
I
the
would like for
discussion
us to
right
look
now.
at a plan for not this budget, for next, to be able to approach that target in a fiscally responsible manner.
We have,
Whether that's, I hope we can knock it all out. I hope we can knock it out mid-year next year. That would be
Sure.
awesome.
but that's not what's kind of what we're talking about in terms of this right now. But you're talking about not implementing the steps
Yeah, I
for
mean,
this fiscal year. And
yeah.
I'm,
My understanding from Andrew is that we could have MTS come in and help us implement the steps now.
but the steps.
Implement the plan, I guess.
Get a plan for putting them in place.
Yeah, and we could get MTS to help us do that, and the Personnel Committee could work with MTS to do it right.
What am I missing that we don't have the ability to implement the plan as it's already been prescribed and already been voted on and decided on and debated? What are we missing that we can't implement it right now?
MTS
I
is
think you two are
expertise.
talking about different things. I
No.
don't understand, like, 'cause
Well, we may have three things going on.
we've got stuff where we're fitting people in steps 1 through 6, generally, right? So, but we've got people here that should be at 15, right? We've got people that are very tenured, very experienced, a lot of knowledge. So we know we're not there. Charlie's talking about getting from what's in here and the 1 through 6 to 15.
Right, and that's what we did with the Personnel Committee, and that's what was discussed, and that's what's already been suggested, and it's already been laid out. Our staff knows how to implement this plan that we've already voted to implement and already agreed was the right plan.
I
What
was
do
at
we-
the-
I'm not against MTS. I've asked MTS to come do things before too.
Yeah.
But in this case, we have more than one thing that equity is important. Equity is what this is about, and that's what the town manager has proposed today, that there's a way we can do this, that it's more equitable for the employees. Plus, our employees can see and hear, and they know what's happening in the market, and talk of delaying them while we study it some more doesn't make sense. Part of our job here is also to make sure the town runs smoothly, and I think this doesn't help us do that. I don't understand why we need another step before we do what we've already decided to do. You guys are talking about two different things. I agree with you for next year.
Okay, yeah.
I'd say make as many steps as you want, build a bridge and try to figure.
I don't,
out-
maybe I'm misunderstanding what
Is
Charlie's
it-
saying, I
Are we
guess.
trying to, I mean, is this so that we can project how much this is going to cost us?
We know
like,
that.
next year?
I guess my point was to make sure we're putting people in the right places, grade and step, to start with. So MTAS can come in and help us make those decisions to start with.
So why do you think we are not doing that with the plan we've already approved?
I don't know, because maybe we got this at the last minute and we've thrown it together, and maybe we can take
It's-
a breath.
Well, with
and
all due respect
implement.
on that, like, as far as putting people into grades, that's, we've sunk that ship once we approve this budget. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, you shouldn't vote for this budget.
No, I don't know if that's
Because you
right.
can't go back and tell somebody you're gonna change them to another step unless it's up. I mean, another grade, not step, up the scale.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you
We
can.
haven't implemented the steps yet, so I don't know how anybody would know where they are.
Well, I mean, in this budget, you're approving moving them to the correct grade,
Yeah,
or the grade proposed in the study.
okay.
So now the step isn't right necessarily, but
And it is public information and available.
Okay.
And just to, again, I think, well, Dan may be right, that you guys are talking similar points, but a little bit
a little
different
different. I'm
timeline.
sorry, that was my misunderstanding.
Right, and I agree completely that the next step is something that has to be determined, and that's something that came out of the Personnel Committee as well. This is the first step, and there are more steps to be taken, and we have to have a plan for that. And
I think that's been my
Completely.
understanding all
Right.
along, so I think that's why I'm sitting here sort of perplexed, to tell
Now,
you the truth.
if we
I'm
get-
confused.
If I'm wrong about that, I'll accept that. We can,
I'll be honest, I mean, I didn't plan on talking about this tonight because I don't need to hear myself talk more than I already have. I'm still feel the same way about it, for all the same reasons. The thing we should have done, should be doing is we should be going back and saying, we got this study. We need a better plan that incorporates the financial constraints of our town with an implementation plan. Unfortunately, but that's not what we're voting on tonight.
okay. Well, if we can't, have MTAS's expertise in that, then we'll move on and do it
Well,
over the course of the next
still,
year.
there's still more to implement, in my opinion, that we know we're not where we need to be. And we don't
Well, they're
necessarily
municipal
know
experts too.
the
I mean,
road to get there from managing a town budget,
Mhm.
financing those increases standpoint. And they may have some expertise they can provide in that. Obviously I haven't done it before.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, I mean,
In the-
if obviously I misunderstand where we are, so we can scratch what I said. We'll do it over the course of the year for the next budget term, and just move on.
I mean, I'd entertain a proposal to go with the original budget as proposed before.
Yeah, I don't want to do that, because we've already, hashed this out many times, but I think we need to do a better job of being prepared for the next budget when it comes around. So that's what we'll do.
And to that point, I would suggest that, over the course of the next, we're now 2 months in, basically, to this year. And by the time we back out prep time, we're really just about 6 months away from where we're going to be starting this process again. I would suggest we take a department a month, and let's start now and look at the budget. Our position. There's not fluff. There's not But that doesn't mean there's not something that we can identify that we can do better or differently. But in this instance, it's really clarified that if we're going to take a detailed look, that needs to be methodical and organized, and let's start now and work our way through it. And before we even get to budget prep, everybody has a better understanding and comfort level with where we are and what we have to work with.
Okay. That's a
Sounds
good
like a
idea.
good plan.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have a motion on the table in a second. Is there any further discussion? All right. Should we have a roll call vote? Let's do a roll call vote.
You want a roll call?
Sure.
Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Councilmember Andrew Gardner,
No.
Councilmember Dan Landrum,
Yes.
Mayor Charles Foss.
Yes. All right. Our next ordinance is an ordinance to retain, is that right? Yeah. An ordinance to retain and readopt Title 14, Chapter 4, Design Principles and Standards of the Signal Mountain Town Code. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second?
All right. Do we need any further discussion about this? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, that passes.
I believe
Did I skip one?
we did skip over lot clearing and landscape
Oh,
ordinance.
whoops. It's not in the packet.
Yeah. It may just be out of order.
You have your revised.
I'm gonna come back to that one last, since the other one's related.
Yeah, let's do this one and then we'll come back to that one.
I'll pass that down.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, an ordinance to retain and readopt Title 14, Chapter 4, Sections 408 and 409 of the Signal Mountain Town Code.
Which item are we on?
We're now on
10,
D.
Yeah,
10D.
yeah, these were, they're in a different order in our packet than they are on the agenda, so my bad. We skipped over lot clearing and landscape ordinance and went to the design standards, which is C.
Okay,
And now we're on
doing
the
D. Gotcha.
D.
Thank you so much.
So I'll state it again. An ordinance to retain and readopt Title 14, Chapter 4, Sections 408 and 409 of the Signal Mountain Town Code.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any discussion? I think these is this D?
Yes.
Okay. Right, any discussion?
Is this the first reading or the second reading?
The second reading. Yeah.
It says first reading on the
D is the
agenda.
first reading.
No, this says first, but it's second.
It is second?
Yes. These were moved over from next week's tentative agenda
Oh, yeah.
to try to clear it, so I apologize for that error. That wasn't changed.
Sorry, let's start over again. Do you have this clear?
I thought that C was the second read on that one, but this D was a new one, and so this was first read. I'm
I
completely
recall-
wrong. Okay, sorry, my
They're
bad.
both seconds.
Gotcha, okay.
We can look at our minutes to be sure. Oh, well, okay.
These are both seconds.
Okay. So, for everyone listening at home, this is the second reading of an ordinance to retain and readopt Title 14, Chapter 4, Sections 408 and 409 of the I've said it wrong every time, of the Signal Mountain Town Code. This relates to the design principles and standards, and as the agenda says, talks about construction of buildings. materials in construction of buildings. Do we have a motion and a second? I think we do. All right. Shall we have any further discussion? No. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion passes. Now, we are at 10B, if you were reading along with us at home on the agenda. This is an ordinance to amend Title 13, Chapters 2 and 3 of the Town of Signal Mountain Municipal Code. This is the lot clearance and municipal landscape ordinance that we've talked so much about, and it's been so long in the making. Second reading. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All right. Do we need any discussion on this? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, that motion passes. We are now to the discussion of stormwater fees. Did someone want to start that discussion?
Sure. Just wanted to revisit that. We pull that out of, generally it's part of property tax billing process. But in looking at the procedures, noted that there was a public hearing required for that as well. It requires 30-day notice. Still haven't found anything else that requires that much notice. So it kind of was unusual. So just wanted to get that back on the radar during budget discussions. My recommendation, the MTAS study, looking at the projects that we have coming down for several years, recommended that basically the fee needed to double. It hasn't been changed since 2008. And we've recommended to implement that basically in 25% increments. Council directed that we change that to 30%. So that is how the ordinance will be drafted, and we will have that on for the 2 meetings in September, and we'll have a notice. And actually, I may have spoken earlier. I don't know that a public hearing is required, but you have to give 30 days notice. So we'll advertise that for the 2nd meeting in September that we'll meet that. So this has been discussed in length and in detail, but wanted to bring it back up ahead of that.
So you can post the notice without knowing what the rate's going to be?
We can post, it's required that we post a notice that an increase will be considered, is going to be considered. And generally that means on 2nd reading, so that's when it would be established.
So if we discuss it at the 1st meeting, we'll have the public hearing at the 2nd meeting.
Well, you'll have the 1st reading
At the first
meeting, because
meeting,
we've gotten direction from council on what
Right.
to do. So we'll draft the ordinance, so we know what the rate will be based on that 30% increase.
That's kind of my point. So we're,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
we're inside that 30-day window. By the time we get to the 1st meeting.
Yes,
That's the
yes, so
point,
we will, after this meeting,
Right.
we'll go ahead and put the notice in for the September 27th meeting, so we're beyond 30 days. But again, we've discussed this and have direction from council, but since we pulled it out and set it aside, I wanted to go through it again and just get it back on the radar that we'll move through this process in September. It is also like property tax in that it doesn't become delinquent until March 1st. So there will be significant amount of time that folks will have to pay it. And we're putting notice on the property tax bill that is being billed separately. We will push it out as much as possible in as much advance notice as possible. And then we'll bill it separately this year. We'll meet all the requirements and provide as much notice as possible in the process.
Might we consider, would it be beneficial to have an education program of some kind about what people can do to keep their stormwater fees down?
Yes, we do. I mean, we have public outreach programs that we're working on, actually working on implementing new agreements for those. And we have information that folks can obtain, request about stormwater fees and how they work, what they can do to reduce those. It's really pretty basic in terms of the stormwater fee. It's based on the amount of impervious surface you have on your property. If you can reduce that, you can reduce your stormwater fees.
Yeah. People looking at replacing broken asphalt can look at gravel, and
right.
There are things like that. I mean, so there are ways that homeowners can make this better, and it's actually better overall for our creeks as well, to soak as much of the water up into the ground as we can.
So that was really it. It was just an opportunity to kind of run through it again in preparation for next month's meetings.
How do we get public outreach programs out to the public?
How do we do it now?
Well, I mean, you said we're working on public outreach programs. I wrote that down.
Well,
I don't know how that's put out to the public.
We have
I'm just curious.
an organization we work with for public education, especially specifically in the schools. I just went blank on the name of the organization. Waterways, Tennessee Waterways. And through social media and other avenues, we could probably push out more than we do.
Yeah.
But that's specifically the avenue we use for education. It is largely geared towards school.
Dan's suggestion was to let people know what they can do to reduce their fees.
Right. That group, like if you contacted Waterways, and you said, I know Ann Haygood has a silver award-winning sign in her front yard that was awarded by Waterways, who came in and assessed the way stormwater is handled on their property. And they'll come in and do that for anybody and talk to you about ways that you can do it. And we have, the town has an agreement through them to help with those kinds of things. So it's,
yeah, I guess what I'm talking about is the active public education part, where they go out and do presentations, are generally geared towards the schools, but they provide information and assistance to citizens in general if you're contacted.
Okay. All right, so maybe we can do, like, get that out on our social media, post it on the town website or what have you, so people
it's
know
good.
about it.
It's Mary Beth Sutton's organization,
Yeah.
so it's good for them too. Yeah, they want to do it. They love to have people participate.
All right, thank you, Boyd. We have the manager's report.
Just a couple things. Want to let you know that the state inspection for the Marion and Driver Field projects are scheduled for this Friday. It won't technically wrap up the project. Will get us real close on a checklist of things that we may need to wrap up. We think those will be minimal, so that'll be a big step in actually getting to the finish line on that project. Mayor asked for an update on Old Town sidewalks. We checked with them. The preliminary plans were submitted to TDOT on May 17th. And actually just late this last week, it looks like the engineers did get some comments back from the ADA section at TDOT relative to the design, and asking for a little more detail on one, existing ADA ramps, which there aren't any, which is the issue. And then some additional detail and specifics on the proposed ramps. I'm not sure where it is in the process, but at least this gives us some comfort that it is making it through the various sections of TDOT for review. And those just came in last week, so that's a bit of a comfort. And they are continuing to work on final design to the extent possible while waiting for comments.
Have they already narrowed down which sidewalks are going to be redone and which aren't? I know that originally more were proposed than we can
Right.
do.
I think we have,
It's in the bike bed plan, I'm pretty sure. It shows,
you know,
But, yeah, I thought you had to narrow it down because it was too many.
Wait until we see how much the estimate's gonna come in,
Okay,
and then we may have to pull back on
yeah, we've,
maybe do a later project.
I think we've identified potential reductions,
Yes.
but they haven't formally been made until we see where the bids come in and what we have to work with.
right, and to be clear, it wasn't every sidewalk in Old Town to begin with. That's why I'm saying the bike ped plan shows the ones that were eliminated from that to begin with, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it shows them all.
Not always been on that plan, but it wasn't every sidewalk.
Yeah.
On the original project, it wasn't every
Right.
sidewalk.
okay, thank you.
And just run through last week, had meetings with the 911 board and WWTA committee meetings. And this coming week, we'll have WWTA board meeting. And again, we are moving toward the consent decree finalization so that there will be a plan of action. I know council was interested in someone from WWTA to come up and give an updated overview of where we stand. So just want to let you know we haven't forgotten that. We're just really looking at a point where they will have the most information to provide, and we'll get that scheduled. And also wanted to just double check and see if you want me to cover TPO next week.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
That's all I have.
All right, other business, communications and reports from the mayor and council. Anyone?
DRC did not have any agenda items, and tree board meets tomorrow afternoon. Is it 4, 5? And it's here in the guild room. Yeah, anybody's interested.
One thing, I just, I guess this is maybe other, does anybody have anything from boards?
Those really are combined.
I
mean-
heard the comment about leaves from Mr. Toth. And that was actually a thought I had thought about before, because talking with folks over the last month or so, for some reason, people keep talking about leaves. And that we kind of, I think we all know that there's a little bit of a danger in how we do it. They become one-lane roads. If it's foggy in the morning, you're driving down a one-lane road. And I just thought back to, I know this would be a less popular idea than increasing taxes. When I lived in Atlanta, we had to actually bag them, which was a giant pain. And I hated it when we moved there, but kept the streets clean, and it was probably a lot easier for the town, the municipality, to pick them up. Might even produce some savings. Maybe something worth looking at as we assess things this coming year.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. Do we not do signs anymore where it says leaf pickup on this day?
We do. We post maps and schedules and put out Facebook posts on what area we'll be in, anticipate like the following week, what area we'll be in, and do quite a bit to try to get the word out. But I think one thing we see as a major issue is the number of yard services that are used, or the number of people that employ yard services, and they come and do it when they come and do it.
Yeah.
And they really don't care. Citizens may know when the leaf pickup is scheduled for their area generally, but when the yard crew can come do it, that's when they're gonna come do it. And not saying that's right, wrong, or otherwise, but we see that as a major issue. If we're dealing with citizens, I think we get some cooperation in response to those things. And I've actually had people say that helps let them know when to get it out. At the same time, we've had crews go down the road and literally come back through to go unload, and people will be out blowing the leaves right where they just came through. So, I don't know what the answer is, but we do understand the issue and try to do what we can to help with coordination at least.
Okay. Well, I agree. If the lawn services are going to do when they're going to do it, maybe the people who engage lawn services can tell them this is when the leaf pickup's going to be. If you could try to target it for that, that would help. But other than that, I'm not sure if there's much more we can do. All right. Where do we stand on those charrettes for the Rainbow Lake?
I think, didn't we actually put the survey, we left the survey up for a couple more weeks. I think that's on Rainbow Lake.
It has been live, it's been live quite a while now.
I couldn't remember when the end date was. We pushed it back and left it up a little bit longer, but I'll check on that. As soon as we can get the results, I'll check with Garrett tomorrow. I'd like to push those out to the Parks Board as well, and get it to you guys to just review, and then we'll start working on scheduling those charrettes.
Do we know, like, in the last week, how many new survey respondents we've gotten?
I don't remember the last time Sam checked on it. There'd been a significant response within that last week, but that was a couple weeks ago, probably.
We had several hundred responses at that time. I'm not that number in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But that's as easy as
Well, I mean, if we had no time frame for when it was going to come down, I think if it's slowed significantly and we're not getting any responses, let's take it down and do something about it.
Yeah, I think we were nearing the point of taking it down and decided to do one more push and did some social media blasts and stuff, and then checked on it, later that week, and there was a significant uptick in responses, so that helped. But we're probably at the point where we've pushed all we can push, and we'll close it out and get moving on it.
I know we had that call with the Tennessee Comptroller's Office. It's not really largely an item to discuss. We can push it, or if you want to give an idea of what they said.
Sure.
Now.
Wasn't sure if you wanted to cover that.
No.
We had a Teams meeting. This is the first one of those I tried to get on. My computer did not like it at all. With a couple folks from the Comptroller's Office, and just basically general overview of the Recovery Act funds, and asked what we were considering using them for, and told them that stormwater and water infrastructure, and we were considering premium pay. They said those seem to be the areas that most people are focusing on. Didn't really go into a lot of detail. They are expecting the final guidance from Treasury to come out on September 10th. We told them that's really kind of what we're in a holding pattern for. They did provide some information on the firm that the state has engaged to help municipalities through the process. And they will actually give you pre-expenditure review of what you're planning to do, so, and confirm that they feel that it would be appropriate and legitimate expenditures before you get too far into the mix. They consider that a safety process, but then they'll specifically tell you that it still falls to the municipality if that's not the case. So we'll still be responsible for anything we do, but there'll be a mechanism to gain a little comfort level ahead of making any expenditures. That was it in a nutshell. It was
She
about a
mentioned
20-minute.
Yeah, she mentioned the match from the
Yes,
state, which is huge. I mean,
the state is considering using, or is going to use, some of its funds to match local funds used for infrastructure, water, sewer, and stormwater. So we can stand to see a significant increase. They didn't know the formula it would be used or how it would be determined. But the state has a lot of money to move around, so we're hoping they'll have a significant impact on the funds that we're able to put towards those areas.
Yeah, so
Great.
it could be huge I think it was just infrastructure, like the water system and the stormwater, but, or the sewer, but it could be huge, really. Our taxpayer dollars actually doing something that people think is great.
Yeah.
As opposed to some of the things people don't think is so great. So
Did they say, like, is it a 10% match, or?
I thought they said 100% match, but maybe I had it wrong. I'd have to look at my notes.
The way I understand it, it will be determined by jurisdiction. And not knowing how much a particular jurisdiction is going to spend on infrastructure, I don't know that they would be able to determine it other than some sort of a formula. If it's population-based or what, but.
So they will give an amount that they will match up to?
That's kind of what I expect.
Okay.
But I don't think my understanding was they didn't have that detail at this point.
And I just got some information today, very preliminary, where the company that they had talked about that was going to be doing that, they've kind of reached out and given us some contact information and some preliminary. I meant to forward that to you, but I got tied up with the budget stuff today and forgot. But I'll get that to you tomorrow first thing.
Yeah, all right, so we'll obviously talk about that further when we actually talk about the funds, how to implement, how to use them, but pretty exciting. And I think the state is getting over $1 billion from the federal infrastructure bill that was just recently passed. And so they're using that to help us. All right, any other business? Okay, we have a tentative agenda for August 23rd, but I think we were going to cancel that if we didn't have anything to do then and have our next meeting in September. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Is there anything that we need to do on August 23rd?
No, we moved the resolutions and stuff forward, and I apologize, that's last minute moving the stuff over to this one that would have been on the 23rd is how the ordinances got a little shuffled, but that's pretty much cleared that.
All right.
So I think we can plan on having the next meeting is the 13th.
September 13th.
September 13th.
All right, so with that change.
And we'll put notice of that cancellation out. And I would ask for a little clarity in moving forward, now if the budget's passed and everything, as we discuss the implementation of the pay plan, I need to make sure I understand the latitude I have moving forward. If council will allow, again, we can implement as recommended originally from Personnel Committee and all, that basically take it from the end of August moving forward and not do anything retroactive. And with a couple other adjustments, nothing in addition to, but making sure that we stay within the confines of this budget. I feel it's a much better scenario and actually puts us in a better position for next year instead of being further behind. So
How would that put us in a better position for next year if we go with the 4% instead of 3%? Wouldn't that put us at a higher run rate?
We won't have as much catching up to do next year.
But it will put us as not this year's budget, but next year's budget, we will have a bigger gap to fill if we did nothing.
Yes.
There's the cost of not doing nothing as well, though, which is hard to quantify.
I understand, and
I'd like to recommend that we give staff direction to move forward with the implementing the plan as Boyd just described.
I disagree.
I'm hesitant to change it. We had so much discussion about the plan and a motion and as it was, and I'm hesitant to go now and change what we've talked about so much and voted on twice now.
Yeah, I think when you look at the purpose of all of the work that has gone before this, it was to create an equitable plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the direction that was given by the Personnel Committee was for staff to find those compression points. And
This isn't compression you're talking about. This is the 3%. That's a different step in the process.
this 4 versus 3% does create problems for very specific employees. And from a budgetary standpoint, this does not affect the budget at all. It's a more equitable way to implement from the get-go. And the employees are also giving something in this as well, in that they wouldn't get July and August. They wouldn't get a retroactive. But in the long run, it's better for them. And in the long run, it's better for our town to be able to keep employees and to be able to hire employees when we know coming out of this whole thing, we're going to be at the bottom of the pay scale in this entire market to begin with. I think it's our job to make it so that staff can do their jobs, and so that when somebody has a heart attack, we aren't short-staffed or have people that are working a lot of extra hours, so folks show up. And I think I get the dollars, looking at the dollars. This is insignificant to that, and it's extremely significant to the people who serve us.
As a matter of process, we talked about that 4% again, and that's, I think, why we took it back to 3 was recognizing we know we can't do everything right now. We know we can't do everything right now. We have constraints, and we are getting the folks that were the furthest off and had the biggest issues, the biggest movements, and we're still giving a cost of living increase of 3% to those who they weren't where they needed to be, but they were already heck of a lot closer. And now we're going back and we're saying, let's go back to basically exactly the full increase.
To the recommendation.
The full increase that was recommended by Boyd and Steve as a step 1, but doesn't recognize any fiscal constraints as a matter of process.
So I would like to take blame from that meeting when we sat down there. I was the one who suggested 4 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
I was the one who suggested it. And I did it because we were at an impasse. I was afraid we weren't going to get anywhere. And so if you remember all that, you guys kept saying, well, Dan's proposal. I'm like, I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. I'm just trying to get something
Fine,
out.
fine.
And so
I understand.
Okay.
You proposed 4-3.
But it matters. What that didn't have in front of it was what that actually does to pay scales, to actual people. It's the job of staff to determine, as you look at these things, what it actually does to those people.
That's compression adjustments.
And that's, I know, and that was what we were directed.
We didn't eliminate
That's what
compression
we were
adjustments.
directed to do.
We didn't.
So if your middle people get hit hard, do you not see the cost of doing that as well if you lose your middle management folks? I mean, this doesn't change the budget for this year at all, what's being proposed, not at all. And it gives you time to do what you
It
said.
increases the run rate of expenditure before we can figure out how to manage it.
Right.
I don't
think
agree with
that we've gone through this and agreed on a plan, and it was a compromise, it wasn't the top plan, it wasn't the lowest plan, it was whatever we could agree on. We agreed on a compromise plan, and I think we need to stick with it. It's what we proposed and agreed on.
You have new data now that is coming from staff. It says, this is the physical effect of what we're doing here. Here's a way we can do it so it doesn't change. I understand it increases the run rate. That's the responsibility of the council to figure out how to deal with that, of if you want to try to do it, by some kind of mountaintop help where it helps out our entire budget. That doesn't need to be carried on the backs of the people who work for this town. Our job is not just the numbers, it's people.
I mean, if you want to make a motion.
I did.
It was,
I said I would like to recommend that we instruct staff to implement the step as was originally proposed, which the only change in that is from the 3% to 4%, so that it gets people at the right places, which was the design of the Thompson Borough study.
No, it doesn't.
Do we have a second for the motion?
Well, we don't have to do a motion unless somebody wants to do a motion. We can just give staff direction. So if we have consensus, but we clearly don't have
We don't have
consensus,
to.
so it's a motion.
Do we have a second?
I make a motion to stick with the,
Well,
The
we don't
plan is
need to have a
approved.
motion on that, because
Okay.
that's what we're doing, if there's no second to this motion.
I don't think you guys understand what you're doing. It is one of the most expensive.
I do understand what
It's-
I'm
Let me
doing.
finish my statement. This is one of the most expensive and misguided mistakes I have ever seen from this council.
You're darn right it is.
We need to listen to staff. These are professionals, they do what they do. We need to listen to department heads, they're professionals, they do what they do, and they know what they're facing. You guys are making a mistake over pennies when it's going to cost you when you can't get people to work. And I'll say it again, we are under raising taxes, but it's too late because it's going to cost to begin with. Anyway, I'll shut up. I'm done.
All right.
Every organization
I am done.
everywhere has to deal with fiscal reality.
Dan,
And you're being irresponsible.
Dan,
No,
You're
you
being
calm-
irresponsible.
I think
You're
you need to
being
calm down.
irresponsible.
I think you need to calm down.
This is as
We
excited as
have-
you'll ever see me.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Because this matter is
Just
gonna.
just calm down. We've gone through this a lot, and if this was going to be an issue, we could have talked about it before we had our first reading of the budget, right? We've gone through this a lot. So it's really unreasonable for this to be raised as a serious issue that's going to cause tremendous problems on the second reading of the budget. So we've already discussed this so much. We've agreed on a plan. We've talked about it in many meetings, and let's stick with this plan. And you can walk out if you want, but
If I may, my understanding, our direction was to compile the budget based on that approach. Not that there had been a vote on how to implement the pay plan.
if
And
this
that's what
wasn't
we
going,
did.
if
And
this
that's-
wasn't going to work,
And
I
that's
think
what
it-
we did.
right, and if this wasn't going to work, or if it was going to cause the types of serious problems that Dan had suggested, we should have addressed that earlier than the second reading
But
of the
compression
budget.
should be addressing most of exactly what we're talking about here. It really should. If we have existing issues of people not of rub up against this position or that, 3 people in the same position, like the example you gave, that should have been dealt with compression, is my understanding. We never said we were eliminating the compression step.
The original proposal addressed the compression that was identified within that proposal. When it changed, that created different compression issues. Now, at that point, we had guidance on how to develop the budget, and that's what we did, because we didn't have time to do anything else. That's what's in the budget. I'm simply suggesting an alternative implementation that resolves the issues that we identified as we work through all this, but does work within the constraints of the budget.
Well, it creates other issues down the road. Like Andrew said, it will create a bigger gap to fill next year. And
We still
That's
have a
just-
gap we have to figure out how
Well,
to fill.
I think that
start.
maybe that is one of the things that MTAS can help us work through in the future.
Sure.
I agree with you all. I feel like we have discussed this at length. I'm comfortable with our decision. I don't know what to say
I think
about it. I don't know where.
By moving people to, that needed to be and aren't affected with the 3% part, they're moved more than 3% by putting them on the correct pay scale, or I get all my terms mixed up, grade, not step, because we're not doing steps correctly. We dealt with the largest issues. That was a good chunk of the apple to take first. And when we go and start moving all these, when you start moving the 3%, the 4%, you're saying we're taking other little bites that we're already kind of in our system that we've identified as the biggest problem areas. We're essentially the process told you it wasn't that big a problem area, and now you're trying to deal with it when we don't have a way to pay for it. So that's what I don't agree with it yet. We have to figure out a way to pay for it and develop a better plan to get, because we still got to get across the scale, right? We've gotten people on the right grade, now they need to get to the right step.
Right, which is part of the next step. This
But
would just change.
4% is more arbitrary than getting them to the right grade too. It's not even the right. Yeah, I really don't agree with that method for tackling that issue.
Well, I think we've, this is talking about something we don't need to talk about anymore. There was a proposal to change it. It did not go anywhere, so we will do the best we can with what we have and work on a better system for next year. So that is it. The meeting is adjourned.